Yup. Welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I am Morrow, your storyteller for today, and with me we have some more RPG horror stories. This is completely unrelated to anything going on with the RPG horror story, so I want to do my check-in, make sure you guys are all good and everything is taken care of. Recently I had a friend going through a lot of issues and a lot of troubles, and made me realize that for some people the year is kind of starting off a little bit stressful, so I just want to make sure I do a little bit of check-in with you guys, make sure you're okay. But if you're going through something, I hope you find the time to finally decompress and just to relax, and hopefully things get easier for you. Either way, I can't really help much by doing anything other than reading some more RPG horror stories for today, so let's join for some nice roleplay heavy distraction together. I can assure you, dear DM, that the sex scene was absolutely critical for my character's backstory. Back when I was DMing a lot, I used to post ads for my games with application questionnaires so that I could filter out players I thought I wouldn't really vibe with, and create groups I thought would gel well. This failed spectacularly, but that's a story for another post. This one is about Bob. Bob really bamboozled me by submitting an application I thought was really good. He had a solid character idea, clearly put thoughts into how he would implement him into my world, and by and large, I was sold. I had a quick chat with him just to tell him how I would run games, when was session 0 and what I expected from his backstory, as I did with all players. I had quite a bit of lore for the world, but mostly try to give the players enough to work with without lore dumping unless specifically asked. He was aiming to play a warlock, so we talked patrons, and I sent over the basic lore details for a few, so that he could draw from it for his backstory. This included a celestial who grew too prideful and was cast into hells, and through unimportant lore, escaped and became a goddess of redemption. A minor deity who could be the matron of clerics, paladins, sorcerers, or warlocks. Sent him her character art. This turned out to be a mistake. Bob was into it. In fact, Bob was too into it. Session 0 goes by without too much issue, and session 1 and 2 weeks later, giving players time to lock classes in and send backstories. I feel like Bob was into it, and he really also wanted to be into it. You know, like he wanted to be into the goddess. Does that make sense? Well, Bob is now basically pestering me for details on his patron's backstory for almost a week. And while I dig enthusiasm, this seems a bit much. Then his backstory lands in my inbox. It is something. His warlock is clearly some sort of main character. He took the idea he came to me with and matched it with every single thing he found cool in the lore. This was now a pirate and a mercenary, but he's secretly the prince of a country and also secretly Astomar because while his mother is the queen, his father is the world's version of Asmodeus. In this setting, a god of retribution and self-sacrifice. He kills so many people and is so tough and scary, yada yada. All this at level 1, mind you. When he is left with nothing on account of betrayal by his first mate, as inevitable as it is stupid, the first mate made a deal with Asmodeus' second in command to overthrow Asmodeus that is somehow orchestrated by trying to kill Bob's character. He is saved by the goddess of redemption, who apparently had her eye on him for a while. This would be a fine-ish, except it turns into a story of how they fall in love, then have a sex scene, which he writes in full. How much of it? How many pages of sex scene did he write? 2? 3? 10? More? It is like 30% of his entire backstory. I am deeply uncomfortable. To put a cherry on top of this sundae, they packed this for him because he's so good at the sex. The goddess gave him warlock powers and is now his girlfriend. Wait, so you can form a pact by banging a hot goddess? Why didn't I do that? I got sold. You know what happened to me? I sold my soul because I thought I was making a bet for 20 gold. And the guy that tricked me, Micah, my buddy now, he used a cheat dice to basically cause me to fail. And that's how I lost my soul to a succubus. If I could just bang a succubus, I could just have a pack like that. And I wouldn't feel so cheated. It'll probably feel good too. Jokes aside, this guy's backstory is ridiculous. I mean, what a premise. But it's ridiculous to think that immediately when he saw like the concept of like this goddess, he was immediately just like, he just went full horny mode and rewrote his backstory to basically be like he was some epic guy and now is a sex god and has a girlfriend celestial like half god or whatever she is. It's a lot of creativity and a lot of effort put into it, but you probably just should have wrote like erotic novel and not a backstory. It would probably work better as a erotic novel and not a backstory for a D&D character. I informed him that I want no part of this BS. He says he thought this was a game for adults. After all, I tagged that as I was looking for players who were 18+. I explained this is because there's violence and swearing and sex happens in the world. I just have no desire to engage in role-playing it or reading explicit prose about it. He goes, aha, and calls me a hypocrite. I block him. The end. People want to have a sex game, look for a sex game. Don't look for a game to just ham-fist your sexual adventures and sexual fantasies. Just, what's wrong with people, dude? Something about D&D players, or even DMs or players as well. Among a collection of all these awesome people that you get to play and meet, there's a tiny minuscule minority that really goes rearing down to just ham-fist some sort of sexual fantasies and fetishes and everything. It's just, I don't get it. I mean, it's a cool concept, be able to, like, I don't know, bang a patron and now that's so you got like a warlock power. I mean, that's kind of cool. I don't mind it. I think it's kind of neat. But for him to write like 30% of his backstory just to write, just in general, to detail, he detailedly wrote the sex scene with all this stuff. 30% of it is just literally unadulterated smut. Why not just be like, they fell in love and their bond was through sex and that's it, and call it a day. I'm pretty sure the DM would be fine with it if you just wanted just to be that be their pact or whatever, but you went full hog into writing the details about all the things they've done, all the positions and all the, I don't know, what do people usually write in erotic stuff? The mixing of the juices, right? Is that what they do? Ugh, sounds kind of gross actually, but it sort of makes sense. Ugh. Anyway, let's get to the next story for the day. I need a palate cleanser. DM enjoys female death a bit too much. My group has had a lot of people come and go over the last 10 years. One was this guy named Craig. He played with us for about 3 months before he wanted to try DMing. We wanted to take a break from our normal campaigns, so we said sure. He introduced us to this setting he'd made that was a lot like World War II, but with fictional countries and magic and evil angels and demons and stuff. We all liked the board game Scythe, and this was kind of based on that with diesel punk mechs and stuff, so we made characters and started playing. Our first mission went fine, then the next one was to assault an enemy fortification. We assigned a squad of Pegasus Brigade soldiers who were all female. This was fairly unusual, so we began to sneak through a secret tunnel to a forest in no man's land with a fortress above. Before long we were ambushed. My character killed a hidden machine gun nest with an acid bolt spell, but before long the NPCs began dropping. This was a savage world, so deaths happened fast. Each of the female NPCs who had died had names, and some blurb about their appearance or personality. Craig described each of the deaths in about a paragraph of detail, how they were trying to crawl for safety while wounded and getting hit over and over, or crying for their mothers. I thought at first he was just trying to make us feel bad for them, but it really seemed like he was getting off to it after a point. Like after the battle we were recovering the 5 casualties we'd taken and putting them somewhere to bury later, and he described how some of them were still alive and begging to be killed because they were mortally wounded and suffering. One was crying because she had been shot through the midsection and apparently her womb was now ruined and thus she had no reason to live. Maybe just me, but Craig sounds kind of, yeah, like he sounds like he's kind of glorifying, fetishizing. There is a certain moment we gotta ask, like, why is Craig going so detailed into the description? Is he enjoying it? Does he want to make people feel bad? Or is this like a weird fetish thing? I feel like it's kind of a weird fetishy kind of thing. Or there's some sort of fixation at least. If maybe it's not like a sexual thing, there's definitely some sort of massive focus for Craig to describe these sort of brutalities these NPCs are going through. And why they're all women? That's another weird thing. Why they're all women? And why they all have to suffer in such a weird way? It feels really strange, you know? Kind of gives me like really weird vibes over this whole thing. I don't like it. I'm not a fan of it one bit. It never quite crossed an obvious line, and I think most of us were just white-knuckling our way through those parts, because we really were enjoying the campaign otherwise. And hey, maybe he just was a really descriptive storyteller. But honestly, the fact that he chosen to assign us with a squad of explicitly all-female soldiers and go in for 15 to 45 seconds each time one was killed, whereas the enemy male soldiers got a sentence of description at most when killed, made me really wonder he was enjoying it. He also adjusted his position in the seat a lot, like he couldn't get comfortable. Hadn't noticed that before, maybe he had always done it, but this time he did it enough I noticed it. Oh, yeah, he's definitely enjoying it. He probably just has a really awkward bone and he's just trying to adjust himself. Or maybe he's trying to adjust himself so he can like use one hand that's off screen to kind of like, I don't know, jerk it, which is really gross. This guy is weird. This guy's genuinely weird. If the NPCs, the enemies, get only a few words, why do the female ally NPCs get like 15 to 40? Do you really need to go that hard into description for how somebody's suffering or like begging for life or something? Do you really need to do that? And for each and every single one of them, that's weird, man. I honestly would reconsider playing with Craig. It gives weird vibes, dude. Did nobody ask him to just stop it or like tone it down a little bit? I would have asked him to tone it down because that's just weird, man. It's weird. Why are you going so hard into this? It's like the guys are really actually genuinely getting off to like women and TTRPGs suffering and describing this. By the way, it's not weird because it's just for women. If we describe for anybody in such a grotesque detail, it would just be weird in general. We had a story the other day about a player, Grug. He literally could not end combat without describing everything being brutalized and grossly destroyed and pulverized in such explicit, grotesque detail. And he had a fixation for that sort of thing. Some people just have really weird fixations, and at times they turn into actual fetishes. And I feel like with this guy, it's just go to a little bit extra. Even if you're describing, I don't know, guys going through something similar to, it's just weird. Why are you going with so much detail for this sort of thing out of nowhere? But it's also double weird because it's like double standards, because enemies are all guys and he just gives them like a sentence or two, but all the girls that are allies that are getting brutalized, he's giving like a full paragraph or two to try to describe how they, suffering, which is strange. It's weird. We played a couple more sessions of that campaign, defeated a War Angel creature, and lost a lot of the PCs in the process. The War Angel had like a 25 toughness, so it was very hard to kill. After that, we declined to continue. A few months later, Craig quit the D&D campaign for unrelated reasons, job schedule changes. Never saw him again. Don't really wish to. It was a cool setting too. I know a lot like it exists, but it was neat that he had fully developed it for the tabletop. I just wish he had included his snuff fetish in it. Oh yeah, the OP thing's the same way. It is kind of feels like a little bit like a snuff fetish thing, yeah. If you ever see any sort of campaign or you get some sort of vibes that somebody's doing something for specific fetish content, call him out on it. Maybe they're trying to actually do this specific thing. Maybe they're doing, well, I'm not saying they're doing it inadvertently. I feel like they're very self-aware, but some DMs just in really weird situations just really want to give this kind of a feel that they're playing like a regular campaign, but instead it's like ulterior motives to try to get some sort of kink going. We've seen a lot of it in RPG horror stories, and oddly enough, it just happens kind of a lot in some of these RPG horror stories where the DMs just want to just play out this fantasy, this kink fantasy, this kinkship with the people involved without even telling them what it's about, but inadvertently kind of pushing them in a direction. And before players realize what's going on, it's kind of too late. By the time they realize it, everybody just feels gross and uncomfortable. If you see that stuff going on at your table, you should probably call it out and see if the DM is doing this on purpose or whatever. They're probably doing it on purpose. They're going to try to circumvent saying, no, I'm not doing it on purpose. What? Kinks? I didn't say it. You said it. Listen, if you have somebody at the table that makes you feel uncomfortable with the weird fetish stuff and you don't like it, call it out, say you don't like it. And if they're not going to stop, leave the table. It's just not worth it. And with that, that's going to be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching, and thanks so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales Tomorrow. Bye-bye.